We are the Guinea Pig Collective. All will be assimilated. Resistance is futile.
Searching for old treasures, blowing off the dust. Timeless stories and legendary characters. This is Talking Movies.
Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome back to another Talking Movies. So on today's Talking Movies, we will be talking about the written and directed by John Hughes, 1985, The Breakfast Club, starring Emilio Estevez as Andrew Clark, Paul Gleason as Richard Vernon, Anthony Michael Hall as Brian Johnson, John Kapelos as Carl, Judd Nelson as John Bender, Molly Ringwald as Claire Standish, Ali Sheedy as Allison Reynolds, and of course a small host of supporting cast that had minor roles. So how did they get into this situation, and how does the story unfold? Well, here we go. Beyond being in the same class at Shermer High School in Shermer, Illinois, Claire Standish, Andrew Clark, John Bender, Brian Johnson, and Allison Reynolds have little in common, and with the exception of Claire and Andrew, do not associate with each other in school. In the simplest and in their own terms, Claire is a princess, Andrew an athlete, John a criminal, Brian a brain, and Allison a basket case. But one other thing they do have in common is a 9-hour detention in the school library together on Saturday, March 24th, 1984, under the direction of Mr. Vernon, supervising from his office across the hall. Each is required to write a minimum 1,000-word essay during that time about who they think they are. At the beginning of those 9 hours, each, if they were indeed planning on writing that essay, would probably write something close to what the world sees of them and what they have been brainwashed into believing of themselves. Now, at the course of this movie, as it plays out, they see things slightly differently, and they realize that they have a lot more in common than they ever would have believed. And one of the interesting things of this movie that there was actually many things that just were not scripted. So one of the scenes in which all the characters sit in a circle on the floor in the library and tell stories about why they were in detention was not scripted. John Hughes simply told them all to just ad-lib. And towards the end of the film, Judd Nelson actually improvised a part at the closing of the film where Bender raises his fist in defiance. He was supposed to just walk into the sunset. Another was done by Anthony Michael Hall, playing as Brian, where he gave reasons for having a fake ID so he could vote. And here's a little bit of funny truth for you. Bender's flinch when Vernon fakes a punch was actually genuine. Judd Nelson really thought Paul Gleason was going to hit him. Judd Nelson also actually made up some of the terms used in the movie, including Neo Maxi Zoom Dweeby. John Hughes actually wrote the screenplay to this movie in just 2 days, from July 4th to the 5th in 1982. And believe it or not, it was originally suggested that there would be several sequels to this film occurring every 10 years in which the Breakfast Club would get back together. And Judd Nelson actually went undercover at a local high school outside Chicago near where the film was shooting and convinced the teenagers that he was a legitimate student. And Molly Ringwald was originally asked to play Allison, even though she wanted to play Claire. Eventually, she convinced John Hughes and the studio and was given the part. However, other cast and crew members have said Molly was originally cast as Claire but tried to pressure the studio and Hughes to let her play the punk goth chick Allison. But Hughes put his foot down and said no. She was wrong for the part. She had to stick to Claire. Molly disagrees with this and says she had her sights set on Claire the whole time. The David Bowie quote at the beginning of the film is pulled from his song Changes, and it can be found on his 1971 album Hunky Dory. Ali Sheedy actually suggested the quote to John Hughes, who liked it and thus included it in the opening. So, the joke that Bender tells while crawling through the ceiling but never finishes actually has no punchline. According to Judd Nelson, he had ad-libbed the line. Originally, he was supposed to tell a joke that would end when he came back into the library and said, "Forgot my pencil." But no one could come up with a punchline for the joke. Now, the switchblade used in the movie actually belonged to Judd Nelson. He explained that he had it for protection purposes. Originally, John Cusack auditioned several times for the role of John Bender. However, John Hughes went in a different direction and dropped Cusack in favor of Judd Nelson. Now here is one that is easily overlooked. Anthony Michael Hall as Brian Johnson. He hit a growth spurt during production. So according to Judd Nelson, Hall was shorter than him at the start of production, but at the end of it, he was taller than him. And here's another strange one for you. Originally, Nicolas Cage was considered for the role of John Bender. So when high on marijuana, Brian says,
"Chicks cannot hold the smoke. That's what it is."
which is from a Richard Pryor stand-up routine. And as most people know, Shermer, Illinois is a fictitious suburb of Chicago in several John Hughes films, such as Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, and National Lampoon's Vacation. And here's another funny one. Rick Moranis was originally cast as the janitor. And another strange audition for the role of John Bender was actually also Jim Carrey. And Jodie Foster was actually considered to play the role of Claire. And Brooke Shields was considered for Allison. And Robin Wright also auditioned for the role of Claire, as well as Laura Dern. And at one point, believe it or not, Bill Murray was briefly considered for the role of Carl. As for some of the goofs during the film, during the discussion, the clubhouse was sitting on the floor, Claire's hairstyle changes back and forth from one shot to the next. And Allison's makeup seems to change from scene to scene. And when John runs away from Vernon, a window at the end of the hall shows that it's dark outside, but at that point it's morning. And while not a traditional goof, it is a factual error. If Andrew had a dual meet on the coming weekend, he would have been trying to manage his weight and not eaten the type of lunch that he had in the lunch scene. Anyway, guys, that's all I have on this one. This was a great movie to watch, and if you haven't watched it, my God, what are you waiting for? Get out there and watch this one. I'm not going to tell you twice. Do not make me send the guinea pig army after your toes. Anyway, guys, have you seen this one? Do you remember this one? Or are you planning to watch this one? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And of course, as always, I appreciate you being here. I hope you had a good time. And if so, go ahead and destroy that like button for me. And if you are new to the channel, welcome. I hope you've enjoyed yourself, and I hope that you will consider subscribing. And I will catch you all next time. Later, y'all.